We'll start in about 2 minutes. If through the forum, if you have questions, we do have note cards in the back. If you have a question you want asked, if we have time at the end, please hold that up and we have volunteers that'll collect that. Good evening and welcome to the Eden Prairie Chamber of Commerce State Representatives Candidate Forum. My name is Pat McQueenie. I'm the president of the Eden Prairie Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber has nearly 350 area businesses as members, and those employers employ roughly 35,000 area individuals. Tonight's forum is designed to provide the candidates an opportunity to share their views on business questions and issues that have been discussed and created by the Chamber's Public Policy Committee. Our format will allow for 2-minute opening comments and 2-minute closing comments per candidate. Candidates will have up to 90 seconds to answer questions. We'll use a 20-second warning sign to hold up, and then we'll hold a stop sign when your time is up, and we'll ask for you to kind of wrap up your comments. I will ask questions of each candidate and we'll rotate who goes first with the questions. The questions we'll be asking are focused on a number of key business issues. As I mentioned earlier, we do have note cards available for anyone in the audience who would like to submit an additional question. If you have one, just please hold that up and our volunteers will come around and collect those. We will do our best to get to all questions given our allotted time. In answering questions, we do ask the candidates to provide specifics as best they can, including any costs associated with any new or changes to programs, resources that might be needed, or how your answer may differ from your opponents. We will ask that candidates and any attendees not bring campaign promotions, buttons, or literature into the council chambers. Any promotional literature should be left outside in the council chambers table. Candidates, please feel free to have questions repeated if necessary. We do have a couple questions that have 3 parts to them, so feel free to ask for a repeat of questions. And finally, and of course, please be sure your phones are on silent mode throughout the forum. To get the forum started, we did do a coin flip, and Wendy was the winner of the coin flip and is choosing to go first with opening comments, and will be the last one to go with closing comments. So with that, Wendy Russo, I'll let you start with opening comments. 2 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Russo, and I'm a 20-year resident of Eden Prairie after moving here for my broadcast career. My husband and I have been married for over 20 years, and he's a small business owner and part-time officer with Metro Transit. Our daughter's a recent graduate of Eden Prairie High School, and I'm proud of her for founding the Best Buddies program in her school. I've worked for several Fortune 500 companies in sales, and I've been the owner of a personal coaching business for over a decade. I'm a graduate of the University of Vermont with a degree in business administration, and my roots in the community have deepened through volunteering, empowering women through employment as a career coach with Dress for Success, a career volunteer at Eden Prairie High School, visiting seniors during COVID with Meals on Wheels, and I've been honored to grant dozens of wishes for kids with life-threatening illnesses as a wish granter with Make-A-Wish. Over the last 2 years, the DFL lawmakers have passed some of the most sweeping and consequential policies in decades, increasing costs for Minnesota businesses, their employees, and soon to be passed on to their customers. When costs and regulatory burdens are high for businesses, investment moves elsewhere. Minnesota-based companies are expanding into other states at a higher rate than out-of-state companies are expanding and investing into Minnesota. My goal as a legislator is to improve the economic climate in Minnesota, help make Minnesota a destination for businesses to grow and find high-quality talent, and listen to the community to help solve real problems and improve the lives of Minnesotans. I seek not to represent a party or an agenda, as my opponent has, but rather to listen to you, to represent your needs. I believe that we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Carly, 2 minutes.
Everyone, my name is Carly Katiza-Wattoon. I am the state representative for Eden Prairie, District 49B. I was first elected in 2018 and have been elected 3 times. I'm running for my 4th term in the Minnesota House. My husband and I are long-term residents here in Eden Prairie. We first moved here right after graduation. We graduated both from St. Thomas, and it didn't take long for us to realize that this is where we wanted to raise our family and build our life. We have 4 beautiful children, and they attend our Eden Prairie Public Schools. We have 4K, a 3rd grader, a 4th grader, and a 5th grader. And outside the legislature, I have volunteered on not 1, not 2, but 3 PTOs over the years. My husband is a senior director at Optum. We live, work, and play here in Eden Prairie, and it's a dream come true to be a part of this community, and it's a joy and an honor to represent Eden Prairie at the Capitol. My background is not in politics, it's in business. I have experience working in a small business environment as well as alongside consultants in global organizations. I know what it takes to set aside our differences and get the job done. Now, more than ever, we need people at the table who know what everyday life is like outside the Capitol. As a millennial, I want to ensure that the policies being enacted now are moving us forward. We must invest in public education, technical training programs, so that Minnesotans can enter the workforce and achieve their dreams. We must ensure that people have equal access to affordable health care, no matter their age, race, gender, or pre-existing conditions. We also need to take seriously the threats against our climate and take action now. As a mom, I know what Eden Prairie families are going through, keeping our children safe in school, making ends meet on the family budget, and securing high quality and affordable childcare, healthcare, and housing. I have a degree in entrepreneurship from the University of St. Thomas, and one of my favorite classes was a deep dive on how to do well in business by doing good in the world. I'm excited to have this conversation with you all tonight.
Thank you both. Reminder, 90 seconds per question. Wendy, we'll start with you on our first question, which is on tax and fiscal policy. Businesses in the chamber would like to see Minnesota be more competitive to other states when it comes to taxes. Minnesota's corporate tax rate is 9.8% and is the highest in the nation. In addition, Minnesota's highest individual income tax rate is the 6th highest in the nation. Do you support reducing either of these tax rates? Why or why not?
Yes, I do think that we should reduce the corporate tax rate. It would encourage businesses to come here to Minnesota, and it's been proven in past history when taxes are decreased, they end up hiring more talent. We need more full employment. I think that we have an underutilized portion of our population, usually over 50, that is hired on 1099 or part-time and who want to be employed full-time. And if we free up some of that money for corporations, I believe that they will be hiring more talent in our state. Regarding our income taxes, we are actually the 5th highest in the nation. That's the current statistic, according to Google. And our lowest tax rate is higher than the highest tax rate of 25 states. It's excessive. I think that it's important to put money back in our residents' pocket, and the surplus that we've had previously is an indicator that we are overtaxing our citizens. I think the more money that we have to spend, the more money we will spend, and that will help spur the economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Carly, do you need the question repeated or?
I think I'm all right.
Okay.
Thank you. So in terms of corporate tax rate, I think it is worth considering a graduated corporate tax. We know that 95% of the profit share is controlled by the top 10% of companies, and around 50% of publicly traded companies are not profitable at all. I think that before 1992, we saw a lot less stock buybacks and dividend earnings and these sorts of things by public companies. And it was actually considered market manipulation to do that because they're just using existing funds and not reinvesting in the business, but using that money to just make more money. Our income tax here in Minnesota is progressive, which makes it fairer. And I believe that small corporations and businesses would profit from a similar system of corporate taxation.
Thank you. Moving on to our second question, Carly, we'll start with you. An additional tax and fiscal policy question relates to the Minnesota budget. There was a large increase in spending in 2023, and looking forward, Minnesota may have a budget deficit. If we do face a budget shortfall, what ways would you support balancing the budget? Spending cuts, increasing taxes, or both?
So most of the investments that the legislature made during the 2023 session were one-time appropriations that are not funded indefinitely. Examples of this are pilot programming for college savings accounts or grant funding for community revitalization. The growth that they're seeing in downtown Fergus Falls, Minnesota is a great example of this, and the Star Tribune just had a really good article on the public investment that is taken to kind of turn around what they're experiencing in their downtown. There is a projected structural imbalance 4 years from now, but fiscal analysts agree that it's extremely difficult to predict those numbers accurately so far in advance. The forecast even changes between November's forecast and February's forecast, which is why the legislature works off of that February forecast, and we can't do actual budget targets for committees until that forecast has passed. I think that the 2025 legislature is in a strong place to avoid any future deficits, but of course, ongoing review of programming and delivery is necessary to ensure the best use of taxpayer dollars.
Thank you. Wendy, same question. Do you need it repeated, or are you good?
If you could repeat it again, yes.
Sure. An additional tax and fiscal policy question relates to the Minnesota budget. There was a large increase in spending in 2023, and looking forward, Minnesota may have a budget deficit. If we do face a budget shortfall, what ways would you support balancing the budget? Spending cuts, increasing taxes, or both?
I think we need to cut our spending, and one of those things that we could do is have oversight on government-funded programs that there could be potential fraud in. We have found quite a bit of fraud already, and I can only imagine if we actually have a task force charged with that, how much more we could find. I think that it's important to be fiscally responsible. Just as we are in our own homes, we have to budget. We have to cut spending. All of the Eden Prairie residents that I know are cutting back. So that means we, as a government, should also cut back. And I think it's important to also make sure that wherever the funds are going, that the tax dollars are well spent and that the programs are yielding the results that they were expected to yield so that the people are getting the benefits from those programs. So I would encourage more analysis and oversight.
Thank you. Next question is related to labor and management issues, and Wendy, we'll start with you. Looking at the labor and management issues, in 2023, the legislature passed a number of bills that impact businesses, including sick and safe time requirements and the Paid Leave Act, which will start in 2026, and increase the payroll tax that businesses and workers may pay. Combined, these mandates require businesses to offer 12 weeks of paid medical leave and 12 weeks of paid family leave, with a cap of 20 weeks total in the 52-week period. If elected, would you support revising these two business mandates and look to provide small business exemptions or other changes to these mandates?
Yes, I would want to look at that and also to reduce these or eliminate them completely for small businesses. I think that it's an undue hardship that we're putting on small businesses who already are struggling at this point. It's wonderful to want to be able to help when families need it, when they're in crisis. I think corporations are much better set up and prepared financially to be able to handle that. not only with the expense of essentially monitoring that. There's a lot of paperwork that's involved. There's a lot of bureaucracy that's involved with making sure you're keeping track of everybody's their sick and leave time, as well as for the family leave programs. So as much as we want to help support people through those difficult times, I'm a big believer that mandates are really one size fits all for everybody. And I think we can agree that every company can allow and choose to offer those programs. Also, in other circumstances, some corporations would offer better benefits, so maybe it isn't worthwhile for them to be paying into that type of a system. I think it's much more effective if we allow people to buy into that system and pay into it and offer that as an option to their employees rather than mandating. And I think it would help to relieve small businesses and encourage growth in that area.
Thank you. Carly, same question. Do you need me to repeat it or?
No.
Okay.
Thanks, Pat. So paid family and medical leave is something that I have campaigned on since 2018. I'm extremely proud that I voted to pass it into law, and I'm excited to see the program become a reality here in Minnesota for everyone. There are pros and cons to every piece of legislation. The way that we structured this program helps small business owners actually provide an earned benefit to their workers that they haven't been able to previously provide in all situations, because now they have the option to split the contribution with their workers. So this could potentially expand the workforce that is available to these small businesses, because there are other workers, particularly millennials and Gen Z folks who are now entering the workforce. They won't even consider working for someone if they don't have the opportunity to earn paid leave. So research also shows that paid family and medical leave helps businesses retain workers. They're more likely to come back from leave and stay working for the same companies. It also can lower other related healthcare costs and drive our expenses down at the state level.
Thank you. Next question, Carly, you'll go first on this one. Another key focus area for businesses is our future workforce and our education system. Minnesota test scores are dropping, and we now rank 19th nationally. What policies and efforts would you support to address the decreases in reading proficiency, math proficiency, and other areas of concern?
As a mom of 4 elementary students, this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I think that looking back, maybe we underestimate the impact that COVID did have on our youngest children. I've spoken with the superintendent about this, spoken with principals, spoken with family members, and how hard it was to be a parent during that time, but also how hard it was to enter elementary school when you were forced to learn on an iPad. And looking back, hindsight is 20/20. Perhaps we would have done some things differently. But here in Eden Prairie, actually, our kids are first graders and kindergartners and first graders. We're actually really lucky. They got to go to school 5 days a week. Eden Prairie found a way to make that happen. And then kids to 2nd grade through 12th grade were on a swap schedule. But I think that COVID had a big impact on the learning of our children and how they started their educational career. We have introduced and then expanded funding for the READ Act to ensure that some of our teachers, our workforce is being adequately trained. And in fact, we gave an additional almost $325,000 to Eden Prairie's teachers and to the district to allocate for teacher training compensation. But additionally, I think that some of the programs that we have passed in terms of attendance issues and just making sure that kids stay in school so that they can learn. We've got a task force and a pilot program happening across the state. I'm excited to see how that turns out.
Thank you. Wendy, same question.
Well, every state has had COVID, and every state has not dropped to the level that we have. So that's not the best excuse. I do know that $2.2 billion has just been given to the schools, not necessarily to the teachers, but along with that came 65 plus mandates, many of which were unfunded, require training, more time away from teaching students the basics, and it's placed many schools in financial instability. In recent polling, principals of schools across Minnesota said they were not asked their opinions on how to improve each district's reading, science, and math scores. 76% reported wanting to have greater influence over state policy. Instead, the DFL issued top-down mandates with one-size-fits-all policies that are not the answer. We need to fund our schools based on their individual needs and allow teachers and schools to make those decisions to improve their students' test scores in partnership with their parents to close the gaps using proven methods. So I believe that we need to remove many of those mandates and work with the principals and educators to hear what their needs are before we create legislation. Teachers need to be involved in the process because it's only through teamwork with those on the front lines who work with our students that we will be able to help the children improve. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy, we'll start with you on the next question. A related topic is the cost and availability of childcare. Chambers across Minnesota hear that childcare costs or lack of adequate childcare is a barrier for workers to enter or stay in the workforce. What solutions do you support to help lower or eliminate that barrier?
Childcare is a very real issue, and I know when I was younger, I was a latchkey kid, so back in the 70s, I just let myself in my home and I had nobody watching me. I'm surprised I'm still here, but somehow I survived that. I do think that that's an important issue because according to statistics, other countries are actually much more improved than we are in terms of helping to subsidize or helping to defray the costs of childcare. And I do have an appointment coming up actually in 2 days with one of our government childcare. She's in charge of that essentially. And she has told me that one thing that they want to do is to be able to make it affordable for everyone. I personally would like oversight on that program. So I am all on board for childcare to be supported through our tax dollars. I, again, would like to see oversight on other programs and help diverge funds and move funds over to the child care program because I do think we need that. But I want oversight, and I do want to make sure that it's not going to be, in any sense, abused. Thank you.
Thank you. Carly, same question.
Thank you. And for those of you who know me, you know that this is an issue that I've been working on since day one at the Capitol. I was the vice chair of the Early Childhood Education Committee my first term. I served on that committee in my second term, and now I'm still a member of the Children and Families Committee. Our oversight has expanded our jurisdiction. So this is an issue, again, near and dear to my heart because of the age of my children and because of what other young parents here in Eden Prairie are dealing with on a daily basis. And currently, the situation in Eden Prairie when it comes, actually statewide, is that if you earn more than $60,000 a year, there are no childcare subsidies available to you at the state level. And this has a tremendous impact on our workforce. We see that parents are unable to choose to return to work because they can't either find or afford childcare in their area. So one of the things that I have proposed is the Great Start Affordability Program, which would expand existing monies up the income scale so that people who are earning $75,000 or $80,000 or even $100,000, we know that they're spending so much of their income, sometimes twice their mortgage payment, and it's really difficult to participate in the economy when you don't have a safe and affordable place to send your children. So it's definitely something that's a top priority for me.
Thank you. Next question will be on public safety, and Carly, we'll start with you. Public safety is another area that businesses and citizens have concerns. What are 3 things you would do to improve safety and provide more confidence for the safety of businesses and residents alike?
So I have a meeting already on the books with our local police chief to discuss how the legislature in 2025 can best support our local officers and, of course, our residents. I recently met with our Hennepin County Sheriff to discuss actually a targeted childcare pilot program for first responders and here in Hennepin County. And I'll be participating in a ride-along with local first responders. Gaining that insight and experiencing the day-to-day firsthand really provides important perspective necessary for lawmaking. I do want to highlight, though, that I think people are, on the whole, feeling positive about how crime has steadily decreased since the highs of the pandemic days, not just in the 7-county metro, but across Minnesota and all across the country. Our Bureau of Criminal Apprehension reports that between 2022 and 2023, our overall crime rate dropped by 12%, and violent crime dropped by almost 7%. Property crimes dropped by 13%, motor vehicle theft dropped by almost 6.75%, burglary and robbery dropped by 14%, and carjackings dropped by almost 40%. And in Minneapolis specifically, carjackings decreased by a whopping 55%. I voted for the bill to increase penalties on carjacking. We are working toward making this a better, safer community for everyone in the state of Minnesota.
Thank you. Wendy, same question.
So I've already met with Sheriff Witt. I already did the ride-along in Eden Prairie. I already met with our police chief. I've already done the work. My husband is a part-time officer. I'll tell you what, your eyes are not lying. Crime has not decreased, actually. I will tell you there are fewer officers than can possibly manage the levels of crime that are happening right now. And just because Eden Prairie feels safe, and it is safer than other areas, does not mean that crime has gone down in our state. As a matter of fact, small business owners are speaking out in their council meetings saying that they are feeling as though they cannot stay open with the level of vandalism that's happening in some of our areas. So even though we are living very nicely here in Eden Prairie, and I would say that probably the worst thing that happened when I did the ride-along was there was some sneakers stolen from Shields, there are some serious crimes happening in our state, and we absolutely cannot ignore it because it will be coming to our area very soon. I want to point out to you that full sentences are not being served for violent offenders. They are serving only 50% of their crime, of the time that they need to serve. Police are being held accountable, but criminals are not. Also, in speaking with Sheriff Witt, she thinks that we need a new juvenile detention center in Minnesota that can work with youth 10 years old and plus. Yes, they are arresting and finding 10-year-olds who are jacking the cars. There's nowhere to put them and there's no secure facility. That will help with some of it. And finally, we need penalties for fleeing from the police to be created, enforced, and publicized. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is on healthcare, and Wendy, we'll start with you. Healthcare is a large part of our economy, and businesses want to provide health insurance benefits to employees, and health providers want to provide the best quality healthcare and still have a positive bottom line. Minnesota has typically been recognized as a leader in healthcare, including having one of the lowest uninsured rates in the country, along with a comprehensive Minnesota Care program aimed at ensuring the lowest income citizens in Minnesota. If elected, what do you see are the top issues with healthcare in Minnesota? How would you work to improve them? And how would that impact overall costs to citizens and providers alike?
One is to open up the market. I think the more competition, the better. We need to make sure that there is free market so that people would have an ability to be able to get insurance and price it out and make sure that it fits their needs. The other thing we need to eliminate is mandates. We cannot ask every single insurance company to cover certain things. That's what shopping around is about. We want to be able to get the best price for what our needs are. So the more that we can allow people to have freedom of choice and be able to choose which company, and also to open up the market here in Minnesota to other companies, I think we're going to be getting much better rates. It's just a matter of the markets and creating a free marketplace for affordability. Any kind of competition is really crucial for insurance companies. And the other thing is, I think transparency and costs is very key, so that when you're shopping around, that it's very easy to see what the cost will be for you. And that's something that I think is important to work on. Also, reduction of fraud is very key, and that's something that's quite prevalent in our healthcare system today. Thank you.
Thank you. Carly, same question.
I do support a public option to allow Minnesotans the flexibility to find the insurance that works best for their needs. Our uninsured rate, has actually fallen to an all-time low of the past 22 years, as long as they've been doing this study, of 3.8%, which is really great. I mean, everybody deserves high quality and affordable health insurance. One of the things that I thought was interesting this summer during the Olympics was that one of our U.S. athletes actually went viral for going to the Olympic Village and receiving health care, dental care, an annual physical, all these sorts of things. And it's all free for athletes. But reactions from around the world on TikTok and Instagram and everywhere were mostly aghast that even in the United States, even our top tier athletes cannot afford regular health care. So this is something that is impacting all of us on a day-to-day basis. I'm an allergy mom, so the reducing the cost of epinephrine is something that's really important. It impacts families on a regular basis. I know how scary it can be to send your kids off to school and make sure that their classmates have a peanut butter free sandwich or that there's no bees out on the playground. And then for folks who have diabetes and are struggling with the cost of insulin, I also voted for the Insulin Affordability Act in my time at the legislature. These are really critical issues that we're making a dent in, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Thank you. Next topic is on environment and regulations, and Carly, we'll start with you. Minnesota's environmental review and permitting system has been criticized as being difficult and confusing and taking longer than other states. What changes would you propose or support to make Minnesota more competitive with surrounding states and help businesses get their expansion projects approved sooner?
I think that there has been a lot of back and forth on the existing approvals process and how best we can change it to make it simple and easily understandable for folks. One of the things that I think that many projects have struggled with is that while they're in the process, then changes have been made. And I think that we all want to protect our environment to make sure that we have clean air and clean water here in Minnesota, but making sure that we reach a point where the permitting process exists and that companies can go through it in order to achieve the end goal, of course, which is to move toward a cleaner and greener economy here in Minnesota and make sure that we are keeping care of our environment and that workers are able to work safely in these projects that can be really dangerous.
Thank you. Wendy, same question.
One change we can make is to expedite this process. So in Minnesota, the current amount of time it takes for permitting is 656 days. In order to be more competitive, we need to really be in line with surrounding states. So Iowa has a 109-day permitting process. Illinois has a 110-day permitting process. Wisconsin, a 121-day time period to approve permits. Minnesota needs to become more competitive to attract investment from new businesses into our state. And although we all agree that the environment is incredibly important to us, I think 656 days is excessive, especially when you look at how long it takes in other states. So that's something we can definitely improve on.
Thank you. Next question is on energy, and Wendy, we'll start with you. Energy cost and reliability are a concern for businesses and residents alike. This is a three-part question. As we look to shift to more renewable sources of energy in the future, do you support lifting the moratorium on nuclear energy to allow that as an option in the future? Do you support new natural gas energy generation in Minnesota? And then please share your views on the issue of prioritizing affordability and reliability versus moving to renewable energy sources in the future.
So I guess I'll start with your last one first, which is affordability and reliability, I think is absolutely crucial. One thing that's going to help our economy here in Minnesota is that the cost of energy needs to be low for businesses and also for individuals. And of course, because we're in the Midwest and it's cold winters, we need reliability. We cannot worry about whether or not we're going to have any brownouts or any other issues. Going back to your very first question, though, I'm going to point to that small cell nuclear energy is actually considered to be carbon-free. And we would be able to allow small modular nuclear reactors, which are being touted as actually the energy of the future. It's currently being used in France, it's being used in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Arizona. And we do need to diversify our energy sources. So Democrats want to move towards wind and solar, which is not recyclable and has a 20-year lifespan. And we need to be more forward-reaching with innovation and consider other affordable and reliable options. Am I leaving out one question?
The moratorium on nuclear energy
Oh,
and
yes.
gas energy generation.
So yes, I support removing the moratorium on nuclear energy in Minnesota. And what was your last piece?
Do you support new natural gas energy generation in Minnesota?
Yes, I do. Yes, I think that that's really important for us to get the kind of energy that we need. Thank you. Sorry, I'm running out of time.
Thank you. Carly, same question?
Same questions.
Same questions, thank you.
Yeah. So nuclear power in the two plants that we currently have operating here in Minnesota are currently producing about a quarter of our energy and electrical needs in the state. I don't support lifting the nuclear moratorium. I don't think that producing additional nuclear power is going to, make the world a safer place long term. So. Natural gas production, I think that, we can explore that existing alongside as we move toward a more clean and green future. So raising that to some extent, I think is a good option. And then thirdly, affordability and reliability are of the utmost importance. We have programs here that ensure people who are low income in the state of Minnesota that their power won't get turned off when we're dealing with these really cold winter temperatures, even if they can't afford to pay their energy bill, which is really important. So I think that continuing to invest in the people. But also at the same time, making sure that we invest in our systems, because we all saw what happened a few years ago in Texas. They haven't been investing in their grid, and then they don't anticipate the climate change weather events that they have happen, and their people are freezing. So we end up across the country shouldering some of the pain for that and the cost. So I think that here in Minnesota we're on a good path and keep moving forward.
Thank you. Adding a question from our audience from earlier. This is a broad-based economic question related for Minnesota. So Carly, we'll start with you. Minnesota has a labor worker shortage. More Minnesotans were working pre-COVID than today. What would you do to attract workers to Minnesota? And Minnesota's real GDP growth lags behind the rest of the country, was in the lower tier of the rest of the country. What would you do to help generate more economic activity?
Well, I'm a bit surprised by the first part of that question, because Minnesota actually has one of the highest percentages of working age individuals participating in the workforce. Either they're working or currently seeking employment. And as of July 2024, Minnesota's labor force participation rate is 67.8%, which is the 6th highest in the country. I would say that, additional employee training programs, making sure that people have the opportunity to leave their career and begin a new career. So retooling, retraining, some of the programs that we have through our technical schools across the state, including Hennepin Tech here in Eden Prairie, are really important. Making sure that folks have access to broadband all across the state, because there are remote opportunities in the workforce these days. So people across the state, even if they're not living in the metro area, could seek out a job that is maybe located in the metro area, as long as they have the infrastructure that work calls for. Can you repeat the remaining part of the question?
Yeah, it's related to kind of the overall economy. Our real GDP growth is in the lower half compared to other states, and maybe highlight why that is, or what you would do to help the economy grow.
I think, one of the things that we can continue to do is invest in invest in small businesses, make sure that folks have the support that they need. I previously carried the Angel Investor Tax Credit, which we just re-upped this past session. So that's going to help bring outside investment into Minnesota and to drive businesses forward.
Wendy, same question. Yes.
The first part of your question again.
Yeah. Minnesota has a labor worker shortage. More Minnesotans were working pre-COVID than today. What would you do to attract workers to Minnesota? And then on that broad-based real GDP question, Minnesota's in the lower half of states in GDP growth. Why do you think that is, and what you would do to stimulate the economy?
So there's a few things. With our labor worker shortage, the age group that's actually leaving the state and migrating at a high rate is 21 to 24-year-olds. I'm going to attribute that to partially affordability. When I first came here 20 years ago, the homes were very affordable, the lifestyle was very affordable. I moved here from LA, and it was amazing to be able to start my family here. The problem is now for young people, even finding an apartment is very expensive. They would rather move to Tennessee or Arizona, a warmer climate and a state that has maybe no income tax. We again have to really address the tax issue in our state, the affordability here, and frankly, I think we should be focusing on helping companies to not only hire more people for jobs, because if there are jobs, they'll even bring people into the state. I was brought here by my company 20 years ago. They hired me. They flew me here. They helped me to find a home. So if we have more job creators, we'll have more people coming here and working. So we've got to start nurturing innovation in our state, making us a destination for young people to start their family and have a healthy career ahead of them. And that starts with business and helping this state to be a place to go for businesses.
Thank you. All right. Gonna try and combine a couple questions real quick, so bear with me. Related to transportation, Eden Prairie obviously has Southwest Light Rail coming. How do you see that project has progressed, issues with that oversight? And then where do you see transportation opportunities for the future? Both residents and businesses see transportation as key components of quality of work and life. And we will start with Wendy on that one.
Well, we have raised a lot of transportation-related taxes, apparently $3.5 billion, and the cost of the Southwest Light Rail has tripled from the projected costs. I know that we had a plan of the Northern Lights going to Duluth, which I think we need to abandon. The project is extremely expensive, and it's much more cost-effective to be driving there than to spend the billions of dollars it would take to get there in even more time. So I think we really need to analyze the use we're getting out of the transportation and where our dollars are going. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. Carly, same question?
Yeah. So I've been a supporter of the Southwest Light Rail for a long time. That was one of the really big highlights to my husband and I when we were moving here as 23-year-old people. And I know that actually a lot of the seniors that I spoke with door knocking over the years have continued to support the program. Throughout the process, I mean, it's been a disaster, let's be frank. It's been very frustrating, most of all to those of us who have supported the project. And I supported the audit. I've continued to support restrictions on how the Met Council and other organizations can use legislatively appropriated funds without legislative approval. So now we're no longer allowing them to use money that's coming from the legislature to go toward light rail projects without coming back to the legislature and asking for permission, which I think is really important. And again, goes to that oversight and how we're making sure and tightening up over the process. We're learning over the years and making sure that implementation can get together a little bit better. One of the things that I'm really excited about, and I've already started digging, I'm the vice chair of the Commerce Committee in the House. I've been for the last 4 years. And so insurance, it falls under our umbrella. And autonomous vehicles are something that are coming to Eden Prairie very soon. They're doing a pilot program here, so it'll be fun for all of us to check out. But I want to make sure that the industry keeps up with any issues that may happen when the robots are driving us around.
More general question. and Carly, we'll start with you. What is your top priority and how would you go about implementing it?
So should I be reelected to the Minnesota House? I mean, my top priority is childcare affordability. This is something that I hear from families at almost every door. It's something that I've dealt with personally as a mom of 4 kids, and I already have proposals in place. I've got plans in place. I was just appointed to another childcare task force from the Capitol, and the Speaker appointed me. So having the experience that I already have and the relationships that I already have at the Capitol with the Child Care Association, with local business owners, these sorts of things, I think that we're really going to be able to change the layout of childcare and make sure that we can get families, parents back into the workforce.
Thank you. Wendy, same question.
I think we need to reduce taxes in our state, whether it's for corporate or for individuals, and that will help spur this economy. The other thing is I plan to be an advocate and a cheerleader for small business. Small businesses are really what made America what it is today. All these big businesses started out as small businesses. We need to become a flourishing center of small businesses, and I personally would like to see us rebuild where there was mass destruction a few years ago. Why aren't we investing money into that area and helping support small business owners so that we can flourish back again in Uptown? I'm not understanding why we haven't made that a priority for our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get to closing remarks, a final question. Voters can only vote for one of you in this election. Please share why they should select you and why you would be considered a pro-business candidate. And Wendy, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm pro-business because that's the reason I moved to Eden Prairie and to Minnesota is for my business. I've worked on television for 20 years, and what I found is the company I worked for struggled. They finally had to go bankrupt and were sold to a new owner. That has caused me to be a 1099 employee. I would like to work full-time. I think we need more full-time jobs. And it's very challenging. We can say that we have full employment here to a certain level, but do we really, or are people underemployed? So I want to make sure that our state is thriving, that we are really focused on growing as a state. Our GDP shouldn't be at the bottom. We're innovators. We're strong workers. Why do you think Minnesota used to be so popular for these big companies? Because of our work ethic. Because it's colder than hell in the winter, we have nothing better to do than to work 12 hours. It's because we care about what we do. We have a pride of ownership. So I think we need to get back to that. Let's care again. Let's work hard again. And let's make us innovators and a place to be in the Midwest. We need to be a destination again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. So as we get close to closing remarks, final question. Voters can only vote for one of you in this election. Please share why they should select you and why you would be considered a pro-business candidate.
So again, I've served for 3 terms in the Minnesota House. 2 of those terms were under a split legislature. So I've proven that I can set aside differences and get the job done. I've worked with Republicans in the Senate and Republicans in the House for my entire tenure. So I think that that's something that's really important. Even though we have a DFL trifecta right now, I still routinely go to the floor in the Senate to update my Republican Senate friends on what's happening, get their feedback on these sorts of things. I have close relationships with a number of my Republican colleagues in the Minnesota House, including visiting their farms multiple times with my family, going out on boats. This is the thing that you don't see when you read the newspaper, and I think it takes time to build those relationships. So when you look at how you want to proceed in the 2025 session, I think it's really important to vote for somebody who knows how to get the job done. And I think that I can bring that to the table because I've proven my leadership. And I think that as a business person, in my former life, I think that something that I take to heart is meeting with business owners and talking to people. And I think that it's very possible to be pro-business and pro-worker, but on the whole, we're all pro-Minnesota. So doing whatever it takes to make sure that we have a brighter future for everybody.
Thank you. We'll now move to closing remarks. And Carly, we'll start with you. And a reminder, we have 2 minutes for closing remarks.
Great. Thank you all for being here and for the Chamber for putting on this event. It's always great to hear from folks. I know I've met with several of you at the Capitol numerous times, and I really appreciate your insight and how things are going in your individual arenas. Some things that I would like to highlight for folks. Most recently, in July of 2024, CNBC ranked Minnesota 6th for business in the country, and the U.S. News and World Report of 2024 ranked us 5th best overall with high marks for our business climate. So I think that some of the doom and gloom that we're hearing from other candidates is not necessarily reality. So I, as a third-term member of the Commerce Committee, vice chair for 2 terms, these are day-to-day conversations that I'm having. That work doesn't stop in the interim. I'm continually meeting with people, continually meeting with leaders, continually meeting with residents and business owners to make sure that we hit the ground running in 2025. And I ask for your vote on November 5th or before.
Thank you. Wendy, closing remarks?
Our current Eden Prairie representative has a dismal 5% out of a possible 100% rating from the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce for her policies affecting business. She voted to increase government spending nearly 40% in just the last 2 years and supported additional taxes and workplace mandates that are crushing small businesses in our state. She also supported more than 60 new mandates on schools that have left school budgets worse off despite the historic $2.3 billion spent last year. And these one-size-fits-all statewide mandates for schools and businesses are not the answer. I believe that costs matter, not just for businesses, but for all Minnesotans. I'm door knocking every day. Families and seniors in our district are struggling to make ends meet. Full Democrat control of state government has made life unaffordable. They spent the entire surplus, raised taxes, racked up over $500 billion in fraud, and spent $730 million in one office building. In addition to the reckless spending, our state tax and rates are not competitive. Minnesota is the top five highest income tax in the nation, and our lowest tax rate of 5.35% is higher than the highest tax rate in 25 states. We need tax relief. We deserve to have a representative who is responsible with our tax dollars, who puts student achievement above political agendas, and who will partner with law enforcement to support the resources they need. We also need someone who will put in safeguards against fraud to protect our tax dollars from abuse. The issues we face will require reaching across the aisle with a willingness to compromise. That has not happened. I plan to be that type of leader if elected. Let's work together to make Minnesota affordable and a great place to do business for a better quality of life for all of us. Please reach out to me through my website, russo4mn.com. Thank you.
All right, that wraps up our forum. Thank you both for your time and participation. With that, we welcome and thank any additional comments on after this event if you want to talk to candidates. We also would highly encourage everyone, obviously, get involved with elections, and we appreciate you both stepping forward to be candidates in this year's election. Thank you.